Touch the leg, everybody, and welcome back once again. I hope that you're watching this video with the best of health and in high spirit. Well, for today's video lesson, I'll be covering the last segment of the chapter, the file handling. And the topic for today's session will be comma separated value. We usually refer to this in a short form as CSV. C stands for comma, S stands for separated, V stands for value. Now, before I get on with the concepts of this particular topic, I would like to provide to you the brief introduction on the basics of this file format, which is called comma separated value. I've listed 3 points over here. So first things first, generally whenever we deal with programs, we always have to start with the entry of data. So generally it happens through the input devices like keyboard, and then the other input devices, like it could be barcode reader, it could even be a mouse. But that's one way of dealing with the data. But at times the data, or the so-called the information, they need to be transferred from one program to another program. Let's say in your database program, we have lots of data. They all come into the database program through the keyboard. But once the data sits in the database program, ultimately it needs to be processed. So you could use some other programs like front-end programs which will use these data from the database program to prepare the report, to generate the graph, to come up with various publication. So these data which sit on the database programs ultimately needs to be used by some other programs for various application. So we see a situation where the data needs to travel from one program to another program, or the data needs to be exchanged between two platforms. So that's when the format of CSV comes into the picture. CSV is one format among many other which will help us to exchange data from one platform to another platform with minimum of fuss. So in short, it's nothing but a medium, or you could imagine it as a vehicle which will help us to transfer or transport data from one platform to another platform without much of a problem. There are many other such the file format, but CSV stands atop. The reasons could be the CSV is nothing but a type of a plain text format. So when I say plain text format, it consists of the numbers and the text. And to be technically speaking, I am boiling down to the ASCII format and the Unicode format. So this CSV is so comparable with with most of the programs and the platforms and the programming languages which could handle the basic operation of text and then string manipulation. These programming languages will have no problem whatsoever using the file format of CSV. So the first point says it stores this file format is a special type of plain text which is actually used to arrange the data in a tabular format. So when I say tabular format, we are referring to the format which uses the rows and columns. So this CSV is widely used, or actually used, to import data from a program or export data into a program. So it is such a easy or simple way to exchange the data from one platform to another platform. Now the most important, the thing for the CSV is, as the very name suggests, comma separated values. I'll be showing you in a short while. When you have CSV file format, each line represents a record. What do you mean by record? A record is a collection of data about an individual entity. So that each line in CSV represents a record, and then in each record we have values which are separated using a delimiter called comma. So the comma is like the character separator. Even if I use the term delimiter or I use the character separator, they mean the same thing. So in CSV, comma is the character which will help us to identify the field values in a particular record. Okay, so as of now things may look little shady, but as and when we go further and further, the picture will start to become brighter and clearer. All right, so let's get on with the first program. Now before I write the program for the first question, let us first prepare a file of CSV. Basically there are two ways. The one, you could do it through the spreadsheet software like Microsoft Excel, or you could directly prepare the CSV in the Notepad file, the text editor like Notepad or WordPad. So let's get started. Okay, first things first, I need this. I need the absolute path of the current working directory. I hope you remember os.getCwd. All right, I'll just run this and I'll get the, oops, what happened? Okay, I need to import os, and then I'll run this. Okay, there you go, I got the address. The reason is I want to save the CSV file in the current directory so that I could use the relative path. I don't need to worry about the absolute path. It starts from C, the folder, so on and so forth. So let's not get into those old stories. So let's go to the Excel program. I'll prepare some data. Okay, so I'll just enlarge the screen. Okay, so the first row will contain the header of the file. The header means, the column names or the field names. You need to know this. The field is nothing but the name of the column. The record means you're talking about the rows, the complete information about an individual entity. Okay, so I'll start like this. Rank for the football player, say player, and then let's have the country. Okay, and then 1, 2, 3. I'll just keep it short, and then as usual I'll have Leo followed by Neymar, and the third one is Frankie. So Leo belongs to, let's do this real quick, Argentina, Brazil, and then Holland. Okay, so I'll just save the file, but I need to save the file in the current working directory. Okay, so I've just copied the address. I'll just paste it here. What happened? It's not working. I'll just go back and copy again, copy, and then paste it here. Oops, what happened? 1 second, I'll just copy this again. Right click, copy, and then come here. Come on, that's good. Okay, I'll just go to the current working directory, right? And then I'll save this as, say, player. Okay, now you need to be careful. The file type needs to be CSV. So from the type combo box, you'll have to pick up CSV, comma delimited. you need to select this and then click on save. All right, so you'll have a couple of warnings. I'll not be explaining what exactly it is. That's not really important. It will just unnecessarily occupy the duration of the video. So just blindly click on OK and then click on yes. If you are really interested, why don't you go through the messages? I think you will be able to understand. Say yes and then close this. So you don't need this Excel file anymore. So you can just click on don't save. So we have just created a file called player in the current working directory. So let's go and check how the file looks like. Press enter. I've just copied the URL here. Press enter. Okay, where is it? I have a file by the name of player. I hope you're able to see this, player. So if I open this in Excel, I'll get to see the same format. The data will be arranged in the format of row and column. All right. However, if I open this in the Notepad, okay, you will see the files like this. The individual row is nothing but a record, and in each record you will have values which are separated by comma. Hence, this file is actually called as CSV, comma separated values. The values of individual row or the individual record are separated by comma. So this comma is actually called as character separator, or more importantly, we call it as delimiter. This comma is very important. It helps us to point to the individual data. In a way, ultimately, it's all about analyzing the data, processing the data. So that's when the comma as the character separator or the delimiter comes into the picture. All right. So it's not that we have to use comma as the only character separator. At times you could use the tab key, or you could use the colon or semicolon, or for that matter any other characters. So basically it's the same thing. So I'll just close this. Okay, so let's go back to the Python program. Now the first question says to read the file contents of student.csv. So the name of the file is not student. It is, I've blindly copied the question from the textbook. So I'll just change it to player.csv. All right, just run this and change it to the markdown. Okay. So let's get started. The first question is read the contents of player.csv. So I have 4 programs with regard to the reading the content of the CSV file. You don't need to fret much over the number of programs. It's just that I'm presenting you the variation. Otherwise, basically these 4 programs are just the same. Okay, I'm trying to show you the various means so that your concept could be strengthened to a large extent. Okay, so I'll just clear the output screen and I'll make some spaces. Okay, so first things first, I need to import a module called CSV. So let me explain a bit about this particular module. I think some of you are a little confused over what exactly is this module. I'll give you a nice analogy. You could imagine a toolbox. Okay, you could imagine a toolbox. So this toolbox is like a module. Okay, so in this toolbox you have various tools like the screwdriver, the spanner, okay, and then so many other tools. So the tools which are inside the toolbox could be compared to the functions. For example, in the earlier weeks we have used a module called, go back to the earlier weeks, just a while back I managed to import a module called OS, and then I used a function by the name of getCW. So that particular function, helps us to figure out the absolute path of the current working directory. So likewise, the toolbox is like a module. In the toolbox you have tools like spanner and screwdriver. Let's say I have to tighten a screw of a table or a chair. Okay, I need to pick up the right tool. The tool could be a screwdriver, and then I use it to tighten the screw. So the toolbox is like a module, and the tools inside the toolbox, are like the functions. Okay, so programmatically, if I explain you a bit, CSV is nothing but a set of software routines. There are so many routines, so based on the situation I need to pick up the right routine and then have it applied to perform a certain application. So let's move on to the next statement, import CSV. And then as usual, I need to open a file handle or the file object using the built-in function called open. And then now this time I don't need to specify the absolute path since the file is stored in the current working directory. Right? So the name of the file is player.csv. This is important, and then followed by the read mode. Even if you specify, even if you do not, that's all right, because by default the file will always be opened in read mode. And then okay, the next statement will be, now this is the crux of the matter. You need to understand this. I now need to create the reader object. This is the file object, and I now need to create a reader object through which I'll be able to gain access to the file which is pointed to by F. So let's say the variable name, you could have any name for this, CSV reader. This is just a variable name or the name of the object. The object name could be any. And then I'll use the module CSV along with the function by the name of reader. And then we'll have the argument or the parameter as F. So briefly, if I explain you this particular statement, what happens here is the file object is being converted to a reader object. I repeat, file object is converted to the reader object using the function of reader, which is defined in the module of CSV. So if I do not have this, I will not be allowed to use the function of reader. So it's like, this is like, the permission for us, to be able to use the reader function. Okay, so in other, angle, if I explain you this particular statement, you can understand this like, I need to pass in the file object. I need to pass in the file object to the reader function. Okay, as a result of which this reader function will return an object of the reader type. Okay, so what goes into the function is the file object. What comes out of this function is the reader object, and this reader object, which is returned, will be assigned to CSV underscore reader. So it's through CSV reader object, I'll be able to gain access to the F. Okay, so whatever information you have in F, will be read, could be read through the reader object by the name of CSV underscore reader. So to keep it short, reader function will convert the file object to CSV reader. So in the later programs, once you understand this in its entirety, the later programs will be much easier to understand. All right, okay, so now this particular reader, CSV reader object, what exactly is this? This is nothing but the reader object. This reader object is iterable. Iterable means repeatable. Iteration means repetition, right? So iterable means, let's say I open this, file. I'll go to open with Notepad. What do you mean by iterable is the object, could be scanned line by line. Repeatedly, you could walk through the individual rows or the individual record. That's the definition of iterable. If I just have only one line, perhaps you cannot say it's iterable, right? So it's a file where I could walk through the file line by line. That's what you mean by the iterable. Okay, scannable line by line. So let's go back to Jupyter Notebook. Okay, so now in order to deal with the individual rows, since it's iterable, let's use the for loop, okay, to gain access to the individual record. So for row in CSV reader, okay, so the row variable, the loop variable, will assume the first record in the reader object of CSV reader, okay, and then I'll just print the row. Let's not do much since this is the first program, and then come out, and then I'll close the file object. So let's check out the output and try to understand a bit. Okay, there you go. The output, as you could see on the screen, what's happening here is, like I said, CSV underscore reader is iterable. So the row will assume the first row or the first record or the first line, and that particular row will be printed. Hence I get rank, player and country. Again the loop repeats. Now this time the row variable will be iterated, will be pointing at the second row, and the second row will be printed. So this will go on until the loop is done and dusted with all the individual rows of the file. So I hope you have understood the first program, which is very simple. Okay, now let's move on to the next program number 2. To read the file contents of, let's change this to player, right? Okay, let's run this. Now this time, it's a little different, but technically it's the same thing as the first one, but it's of utmost importance that you taste, you come across these variations, so that you are left with no room for confusion and complication. Now this time the question says you need to use with statement. Remember? Okay, let's again, now this time you don't need to import the module of CSV. Okay, now this, the page that I'm dealing with is nothing but a notebook. So once you import a certain module, that will be applicable to the entire programs. Whatever said and done, even though you seem to be dealing with different programs, but they all reside in the single notebook. So let's not, okay, maybe for one last time we'll do it, otherwise you may miss out. Import CSV, let's make some spaces. Okay, this time I have to use the with. So WITH, open, the name of the file is player.csv. It will be in the read mode. Okay, let's not specify, since by default it's a read mode. And then as the name of the file object will be F, right? It's now time to convert the file object to the reader object. Remember, it is through the reader object that will be able to gain access to the file of player.csv. Now this time I'll have the variable name as my reader. So this is the reader object, and then I need to use the CSV module with the function of reader. The argument and the parameter will be f. So the file object will be converted to reader object, and through the reader object, we could iterate, as a result of which we could deal with the individual rows or record. All right. Now this time I'll do things little different. Okay, I'll take the help of an empty list, perhaps called rows equals. This is an empty list. Okay, now let's iterate, or let's walk through the individual rows or record of the player.csv using the for loop. So it's going to be like for record. The names should be as friendly as possible so that you'll be able to understand the program better. For record, in the name of the reader object is my reader. Okay, I hope you're okay till this point. So we'll try to append rows dot append, and then I'll have the record. So as obvious as it can get, REC will have the first record, or the first line. The first line will be appended to an empty list called rows. So in this particular rows, which is nothing but a list, the first record or the first line will become the first element of the rows. Okay, so I guess that's all, and then I'll just close it. I don't need to close it since I'm using the with statement. I will just print the contents of rows. It's a little different, but technically it's just the same thing. So we'll just run this and check how the output looks like. Okay, so you don't need to get confused much. Rows is a list. It's a big list. It's an empty list to start with. REC loop variable will be assigned with the first record. The first record in the file is rank player country. So record, this is nothing but a list. This list, record as a list, will be appended to another list called rows. Hence, this list, the first line, will become the first element of rows, as you can see here. So this will be the situation at the end of the execution of the first loop. All right. And then when you go for the next loop, rec will assume the second row. The second row is 1 day Argentina, will now be appended to rows. So this will go on and on. So finally, when you print the rows, the opening parenthesis for the rows is this, and this is the the ending, the parenthesis. In between you have the individual element, which are nothing but the individual record or the individual lines of the CSV file of player.csv. So again, this is another variation via which you could read the content of player.csv. So the difference between the first program and the second program is, in the first program we have just printed the individual rows, right? But in the second program, we first appended the individual rows to an empty list one by one, and then finally, we printed the entire content of the rows at one go. So this is nothing but a nested list. The individual or the embedded list are nothing but the individual rows or the record of the player.csv. So let's go and look for another way to print the records of the player.csv. All right. Okay. Next time I'll make sure that I get the question right. I can just change this to player.csv, and then I'll just run this. Okay, let's read the question properly. To print the records of the player.csv file in the form of comma separated values. This time I would like to display the records just as how it is in the original file format of player.csv. For this time, we'll have to use a special function by the name of the join, which belongs to the string module, if I'm not wrong. Okay, so let's not, okay, we'll just type it. It'll be a nice visual revision for you. Okay, let's not import the CSV. We'll straight away use the with open. The name of the file is player.csv. I want you to recite along with me. Okay, let's not have the file port, and then for a change, let's have the file object's name as just file. Okay, and then after this, I need to have the reader CSV R for a change. So this is the reader object. I'll have to use the module of CSV. The name of the function is reader. The name of the file object is file. Alright, let's iterate. For this time I'll use row, perhaps row in CSV R. Okay, I've just changed the names. Yes, it may sound a little complicated, a little difficult, but it's a good practice to be using, to be confusing you deliberately, so that you will have a greater level of understanding. Okay, so this time I would like to print the values separated by comma. So print, you'll have to use the character separator of comma, because the very question says the values of the list should be separated by comma, and then you'll have to use a special function by the name of join. Alright, so this is the character separator. Alright, and join function will actually pick up the individual values. As in our example, we have 1 Leo Argentina, right? So the individual values of the rows will be joined by the specified character. So row as a whole will have the complete record or the complete row. So this join will pick up the individual the values, field values, and then in between they'll be joined by the character separator, which is specified here. So we'll just check the output so that you'll be able to understand better. Okay, let's run this. I hope I got it correct. Okay, hopefully. Okay, look at this. So what happens here is the row will have the first record. Okay, so this join will help us to insert comma in between the values of the row. At times you could use perhaps we'll try with tab. The escape sequence for the tab key is /d, remember. So if I run this, okay, in between the values of the list, what separates is the tab key. Okay, or at times I can use the say colon and then run this. Okay, so this time the character separator is the colon. So this is again another way of displaying the content of the player.csv, but using the join function. Okay, so it's straightforward. We now have 3 ways to display the record of player.csv. Let's move on to the fourth and the final one. So once you understand the program number 4, you will feel extremely confident of yourself dealing with reading the contents of the player.csv as a file. Now this time I'll just copy and paste it in order to speed up the video. Okay, let's do this real quick, no problem. This time I'll just change this. This has to be player.csv. I'll be using a certain string format via which the output could be displayed in a formatted way out. Formatted means, there will be a proper structure. Alright, formatting means, let's say if you want to format a paragraph, the justification of the program, the paragraph, the alignment, the line spacing, the paragraph spacing, they actually help us to make the paragraph look better. So that is the exact meaning of format. So through this program you will learn certain ways via which we could format the output. Okay, let's change this to the markdown. Okay, so to start with, I'll use the width directly, width open, and then the name of the file is player.csvsf. Let's make some spaces. All right. Okay, width open, and then let's have the reader object as usual, csvr, and then use the module of csv. The name of the function is reader, and then you'll have the f. All right. So first things first, I would like to print the headers first, and then I'll have a line followed by the records as a simple way to make the look paragraph little better, little easier to understand. So in future, when you deal with the project, these formatting options are really very important. Okay, so I'll use a variable called header, and then I'll have csv csvr, and then I'll use the function called next. I'll use a function called next. I tend to write the function later because till this year I've been dealing with C++ and the language like Java, where the function comes later. Okay, in Python it's a little different. So next, csv_r. What does this function do is it will return the first row or the current row, and then the first record or the current row will be assigned to the header. So the header will now have the list, which will be nothing but the first row or the first record. And not only this, the next will advance the iterator to the next line. Initially the iterator would be pointing at the first line. So this next will pick up the first row, it will return the first row to the header, and then it pushes the iterator to the next row. So the next row indicates the first actual record of the player.csv. Remember, the first record is the header or the column names. The second record is the first actual record, which contains 1 Leo Argentina. All right. So we'll just print, the header first, but this time I would like to, use the string formatting options. You have something called %5s. So this is nothing but a formatting used for string, a format which is used to adjust the string values. So this s refers to the spaces, so which means I'll be using the 5 spaces for the following field. The following field or the next field is header, and then followed by the index of 0. So once, if I explain this, you'll be able to understand the rest. So just a little thought over this. This is nothing but a format used for the string. All right. So which means this field value will be using 5 spaces, all right, in order to make the appearance, you know, of the field list, you know, uniform. So that's the whole idea. You know, we want to format the output so that it would look better. All right, and then followed by, I'll just copy and paste it. Okay, I'll just write it, and then followed by, say, for the next comes the name. The first element is the rank, so I'll just use only 5 spaces. Now the next is the name, hence I'll be using 10 spaces. So for this, the format will be 10 spaces, and this will be applied to, this will be applied to the second item, or the second element, or the second field to be precise. That's going to be 1. And then finally the country, I'll be using 15 spaces. So first specify the placeholder, or the field width. You could call it as placeholder or the field width. So that's gonna be 15, and then S. So likewise you have D for integer, F for float. Let's, you know, leave these things, you know, behind for a while. And then this will be applied to the header, and the index is 2. Okay, that's it. So this statement will help us to print the headers or the column names. So let's have a line. Okay, I'll use the asterisk. Okay, that should be enough, I guess. Some more asterisks. Okay, once I'm finished with this, I now need to start iterating to print, you know, the rows, you know, the one by one. So I'll use the loop variable called ROW for row in. The name of the reader object is CSVR. Okay, CSVR, and then again I'll just copy and paste it. Okay, but when you practice, do not ever, you know, the programmers are never ever supposed to be lazy. All right, but as of now, I'm not being lazy, trust me. Just trying to speed up the program. Okay, so let's just change this to any guesses. This has to be row. Okay, these are self-explanatory. Row 1, and then finally you'll have the row. Okay, that's it, I guess. And then come out. Do I need to close it? I don't think so. Okay, because I'm using the with statement. And then let's run the program. Okay, there you go. So I have too many asterisks. Just rerun this. Okay, now this is self-explanatory, right? I'm using 5 spaces for the rank. I'm using 5 spaces for the rank, and then 10 spaces for the player, and then 15 spaces for the country. So as a result of this, the first line will be printed, and the rank will occupy 5 spaces. The header will occupy 10 spaces. It starts from here. It starts from here, right? That's a good idea. It starts from here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There you go. Okay, so you know the rank uses 5 spaces, and then player uses, what goes on? It uses 10 spaces. It starts from here, and then country uses 15. And then as usual, row will assume the first record, out of which, you know, it will pick up the first element of the first row, and that's going to be 1. Second element of the first row, that's going to be Leo. The third element of the first row, that's going to be Argentina. So again, these are nothing but the formatting options which are used for strings. And then if you could notice something, you know, the lines are aligned, you know, on the right side. Look at this. So the idea of using these string formatting options, you know, is to present the output better. Later, when you start to make project, you need to prepare the report, and the report needs to be properly formatted or properly presented. Ultimately the users are going to deal with the reports, so the report needs to be properly formatted or structured. So the options like these will help us to format the output in order to generate the report in a proper format. So this is program number 4. Let's check the time.